You're listening to Make It, the indie film podcast. Hello, Chris here with another episode of the Make It podcast. And before we get into this week's episode, let me take time to promote and talk about our Bodega Sync Indie Artist of the Week. And this week, our artist is the one and only Amy J, and the track is Joke. So just like every week, you'll hear a little bit of the track Joke at the beginning of the episode, and you'll hear the entire track at the end of this episode. So let me talk a little bit about who Amy J is. She is a New York-based singer-songwriter who harnesses the power of vulnerability and introspection with her indie folk music that captures the afflictions of humanity and explores the depths of emotionality. The track Joke asks if life is just one big joke when things don't go as planned or when crazy events happen in the world. While its lyrics are moody, they are tinged with the hope that there might be an explanation, right? The drums establish a pounding rhythm from the opening notes, giving the song an urgent, sort of restless feel. And the insistent beat seems to represent the endless march of days where nothing makes sense. All right, man. She's setting you up for an intense track here. Okay. The guitar melody echoes the anxiety expressed throughout. So this is sort of an existential track. What am I doing with my life? What does life mean? How did I get here? What am I supposed to do with my time here? I love all that stuff. Okay. If you want to support Amy J, you can do that at her website at www.amyjmusic.com. You can find her on Instagram at instagram.com/AmyJMusic. And you can also support her on TikTok at tiktok.com/AmyJMusic. So go do that. Please do support these independent artists. And without further ado, I give you John Kirby and Libby Handros. We had an amazing conversation. There's a lot of stuff said that you can only, it's almost like you got to be a fly on the wall in a room where you're listening in on confidential information, right? Like you're not supposed to be hearing this stuff, but you get to hear it anyway. So really enjoyed this conversation. It was an intense conversation, and we kind of go around the world on it in terms of documentary filmmaking, conspiracy theories, assassinations, all kinds of stuff. So buckle up and get ready for a wild ride. And now we give you John Kirby and Libby Handros. Enjoy. Hello, Chris here with another episode of the Make It podcast. And here with me this week are my incredibly esteemed guests, the one and only John Kirby and his producing partner, Libby Handros. John, Libby, say hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Welcome. And of course, I would not be complete without my partner in podcasting, Nicholas Buggs. Nick, say hello.
Hello. I think that,
hello, my friend.
I was trying to figure out what I was going to say. I was trying to figure out if I was going to pass the test like John did or fail it like Libby did. Cause Chris said, say hello. And then Libby said, hey, and I was like, so I was in between. I was going to be like, aloha. You know what I'm saying?
Well, we're going to find out the kind of documentaries these guys make. They don't just take orders.
No, they don't.
No, we don't.
They break rules. They break convention, 100%. And just like John and Libby, Nick, me and you have been essentially producing partners for 25 years. Like we've been around each other a long time. So this is kind of kismet. I like this. Before we hop too deep into all the topics we have,
we have so many
in segments and just a good time sort of scheduled and planned for the audience. Why don't you guys tell us why you're here? What's your name, your title? What might we know you for? What are you working on now? What are you excited about? Give us the lowdown.
All right. Well, I'll start, I guess. I'm John Kirby. I'm the director, editor part of the team. And we have been working together for about 25 years or something like that, like you guys, as you mentioned. And the first big film that we did together was a festival favorite, and it was produced by the BBC and the Sundance Channel, and it was called The American Ruling Class. And I bring it up in particular today because yesterday we got the very sad news that the star of that film, Lewis Lapham, the longtime legendary editor of Harper's Magazine, passed away. Mm-hmm. And he was a very dear friend of ours. We did many projects with him. He launched the careers of thousands of writers, literally, and was involved in so many important projects, and really revolutionized so much of the culture. People don't realize when they do top 10 lists or any of that kind of stuff. He created the Harper's Index that gave birth to all of those things. So we mourn Lewis today, but that was the film. Libby and I actually got together on a film called Lindbergh, the Legacy. It was called Triumph of
Legacy of a Kidnapping.
Sorry, this was a long time ago now. Legacy of a Kidnapping. Lindbergh and the Triumph of the Tabloid Press, which was with Lewis, and that's how we all met. And so we are sad to bid Lewis goodbye. Libby and I went on to make many other films, and we are currently, the most important thing is that we are currently engaged in a film cycle, which we can talk more about, called Four Died Trying. The first part of that cycle, the prologue, as we call it, is out now on various platforms, Amazon, etc. And you could go to our website, of course, fourdiedtrying.com to see about it, to see more about where you can watch it. It is about the major assassinations of the 1960s. And we have interviewed over 130 people, many of whom are now dead. I noticed that you guys had a podcast about Dick Gregory. We may have one of the last, if not the last, interview with Dick Gregory. He, of course, as you, I'm sure, know, was, in addition to being an activist and comedian, he was a Kennedy and Martin Luther King researcher. Yes. So we have, and responsible in large part, along with another interview subject of ours, Bob Groden, for getting the Zapruder film out to the public. So the film series their series of films, or the film cycle that we're doing, explores these assassinations. What were these men doing in the last years of their lives? John Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King. What led them how did they end up being killed? What were they doing that so angered the powers that be that they felt that these men had to go? So we regard this as a false mystery. We can talk more about this later. We know who killed these men. We know that elements of the state were involved in the top levels of the state were involved in the assassinations of these four great Americans. And so we don't make any bones about that, and neither do most of our interview subjects, who include family members, friends, colleagues, some of the enemies. So it's been a major project that's been ongoing for 8 years, and we've put our whole lives into it. And we will be releasing these things as they are done. And the next big one coming out will be about Jack Kennedy and the fact that he was a major anti-colonial revolutionary, which a lot of people don't know. So anyway, I've spoken enough. I'll let Libby introduce herself.
So I'm Libby Handros, and before I got into the business of doing long-form documentaries with this gentleman over here, I started my career in daily journalism, working for Metro Media, which then became Fox. Murdoch bought Metro Media, and that became the basis of the Fox empire. And I worked on the 10 o'clock news here in New York City, and then I went to work for a show called Inside Story, which in the early 80s, which was the first regularly scheduled press criticism show ever to appear on television. It was anchored by Hot Carter, and you guys may or may not remember Nightline, which Ted Koppel did for many, many years. And that show began as something called America Held Hostage during the Iranian hostage crisis. Wow. And it was Ted Koppel and Hotting. And Ted went on to do Nightline, and Hotting went on to do Inside Story. That was on PBS for 4 years. And when that went off the air because we lost our funding, we started to do long-form documentaries and on subjects ranging from the 50th anniversary of the making of the movie Casablanca to a bunch of films about baseball with the Baseball Hall of Fame, and eventually the Lindbergh film, which is how John and I teamed up. And the rest is history.
There you go.
Well, there's so much to dig into here. So our condolences and shout out to Lewis Lapham, 89 years old, 89 years young. What a life. And so, I think more people should know that name. So I'm glad that you brought him, up. And, I know that even though
I was going to say that's a future things we should know.
That's a future. Yeah. That's a future things we should know. And, even though he grew up, at minimum, middle class, if not better, he didn't really, he still spoke truth to power. He was someone who was sort of the anti-classist. That's right. That's not to say he didn't have class. That's just to say in terms of classism, he worked hard to fight against it. And so I'm really glad you brought that up. And of course, Dick Gregory is one of the reasons we're even on this podcast. And so we're definitely going to ask about the details of that last interview if you don't mind.
Of course.
One of the things that I just wanted to start us with, because I have to say you guys have gotten pretty lucky with the timing here. In a really strange and maybe even dark way. This reminds me of a documentary me and Nick saw at a festival last year called Black Barbie. And there was an outside consensus that filmmaker had somehow saw the Barbie movie coming out and rushed a documentary out to time it with the feature film, when in reality she'd been working on it for 12 years.
That's right.
And she had no idea that the feature film was coming out. She just got lucky. And so here we are on a podcast with two individuals that know so much about how state assassinations happen, how the Secret Service works, the CIA's involvement in things, privacy, the FBI, presidential elections. I just have to ask you what your take was on the attempted assassination of Trump.
Well,
and about the luck of this documentary coming out right when this is on everyone's mind.
Well, yes. You can almost call it a re-release, right? It's like, as it says on there, it's like he blocked it through the channels that he had to keep it out of people's hands. And now it has been released and it's very good. And I will say there's that 90s nostalgia of it when I was watching.
Are you talking about the Trump documentary?
The Trump documentary.
I'm talking about the four that died.
Yeah, right. And the Trump documentary coming out at the same time. It's like
four that died trying.
The four that died trying. But it's like the Trump one is like it's all the timing. It's like how is that even? How
Libby will have to tell you. Well, Libby.
Well, we watched it. It's the Donald Trump me and Nick both know.
Yeah, Libby will have to. That's a whole story in and of itself.
Old Trump, new Trump, same Trump is our tagline for that. And I think it stops in 1990 when he declares bankruptcy, but it doesn't matter. You see him reinventing himself over and over again.
But Libby, Trump managed to suppress that film back in the day. Right. The networks were too afraid to air it, but Libby did. There's a whole fascinating story about Libby bringing that film back out when we tried to bring that film back out for 2016 and what happened there and the things we learned about who wanted to take Trump down and who didn't. And it would surprise you, but that's a whole nother story. It's funny and everyone's views have changed over the years on all of this, but in regards to Four Died Trying being about assassinations and this recent assassination attempt or apparent assassination attempt. Mm-hmm. Let me just say this. Our understanding now of these things is that they are false mysteries. If you dig just a little bit, you see, the Warren Commission doesn't ask any of the right questions. They hide and bury evidence. It's all right there for everyone to see. It always has been. And when you look at, things like, like when they take the limousine that Kennedy was driving in and they send it back to Ford to have it rehabbed, or they take Governor Connolly's shirt, and they have it dry cleaned. He's just been shot. It's like, or they allow the prime suspect to be killed while in police custody on national television. These sorts of things are kind of tells that, of highest level state involvement. And there are all kinds of fascinating segues and stories to all that. But what we've come to learn a lot about is the concept of patsies, of course, the people who are going to take the fall, and the concept of, who's really doing the shooting. And, in the case of, say, the Bobby Kennedy Sr. assassination, there was a patsy, Sirhan, who may or may not have had bullets in his gun, depending on who you ask, who was there visibly firing a gun while Bobby was shot from behind. So, and Oswald, he had no gunpowder on his hand, or he had not shot a rifle that day, et cetera, et cetera. And, expert marksman shot John Kennedy from multiple directions. The same with Martin Luther King. He was on a balcony, he shot most likely from the bushes below this bathroom that they say James Earl Ray shot from. James Earl Ray was not in that bathroom and could not have shot. No one could have shot out of that bathroom. He was out driving around. He may have had some part in all this, but he definitely didn't do the shooting. Anyway, he ends up taking the fall, right? And that's all very interesting. My point in saying all this is this, that, we are offered the same sort of thing, a patsy and all kinds of strange failures on the part of the Secret Service. I would just say this and maybe leave it at that. If the so-called deep state, the permanent government, the national security apparatus wanted somebody dead, he would be dead.
Correct.
So I'm not sure about everything that we saw. And I want to say, by the way, we are totally above the Republican fray. Like our friend Lewis, we're small D Democrats, small C conservatives, left libertarians. Who knows what we are? I don't think we could not easily pin ourselves down politically. And so therefore we have great empathy for people who call themselves Trump supporters, and we have great empathy for people who think of themselves otherwise. I think that that there was a coup in 1963, and there hasn't been a president since then. And there hasn't been a Truth and Reconciliation Committee. That's what you learn when you do this. And I'll leave it there.
It's really interesting that we haven't gotten the documentation and the court rulings on JFK and RFK that we've gotten on MLK Jr. and Malcolm X, right? MLK Jr.'s family won a case in Memphis that basically says, hey, my father was not killed this way. And the FBI documents from Malcolm X came out 2 years ago, I think.
Not all of them.
Not all of them. They had them sort of redacted, but it kind of just showed that the FBI killed him.
And in terms of Martin Luther King, there is a whole tremendous tranche of documents that are sealed until at least 2029, I believe. They're not all out. The documents that were part of the HSCA, the House Subcommittee on Assassinations, not all of those documents are out.
But what Chris is referring to is the civil trial.
Yeah, the civil trial. Definitely.
But do you want to say anything about it? No?
No, I mean, it's interesting that the civil trial, it's the only, there's two trials. You've got they open up the case on Malcolm X a couple of years ago. And of course the verdict changes and there is the civil trial, but it's like the civil trial came and went. I mean, only one reporter was there on a daily basis. James.
Wait, you just switched names. You mean Martin Luther King?
Yeah. Well, no,
you said
Malcolm X 2 years ago.
Yes.
Which here in New York City,
right.
They opened it up. They exonerated the original guys. Now I went back to Martin Luther King.
Right.
And I said on the Martin Luther King civil trial, there was a verdict, but nobody knows it happened. It was covered by one reporter who came daily, Jim Douglas. That was it. And it made it to and the only time the press came was when Coretta testified. And the whole thing was on page 89D of the New York Times, who goes beyond, the first section even. So right. It's something that very few people even know about, let alone then followed up on.
That's right. And even in the Malcolm case, while there are kind of exonerations and there are, civil penalties that, there are lawsuits that are being conducted and people, are getting wrongful conviction, awards. The reality of why Malcolm was killed is not coming out. And, yes, maybe people have an idea that it was like local police or something like that, or, maybe some FBI, but they're not really appreciating how important an international figure Malcolm was and how dangerous and embarrassing he was going to be to the power structure. He by like filing human rights charges against the United States in the UN, where he had an office. He actually had a place to go at the UN, and he knew he and Kennedy, by the way, share that in common. They each had a very profound connection to Africa. And
yes,
Kennedy ran basically on saying, look how we've neglected Africa, these newly emerging countries, all this post-colonial movement that was happening throughout the third world. But he would particularly single out Africa, and he was the chairman of the Senate subcommittee on Africa. And when he would run on, look what you've done. You're not, the Soviets had their ambassador there the first day that Guinea declared independence. Guinea. And also got all these other places. And, from Kwame Nkrumah and Ghana to you name it, the Soviets are there. They're acknowledging and recognizing these African countries. But Kennedy didn't care about it just because he was interested in stopping the spread of totalitarian communism. He was also interested in it because he was an Irishman who hated the concept of colonial rule and was like, we need to support, he was like, my people, we've got great speeches from him, and you'll see in the upcoming chapter, I should call it. Where he says, I come from a place that was under colonial tutelage for over 700 years. And, so a lot of these places were former British colonies, et cetera. So he is all about reaching out. He wants people to have, sovereignty, to have self-governorship. And I didn't know this. He throws all these newly minted countries, their leaders, he throws them ticker tape parades in New York, gives them state dinners. It's incredible footage. He's having these lavish state dinners for the heads of Namibia and Ghana and all these other places. It's just astonishing. And he's really reaching out. Likewise, Malcolm is friends with all these guys and is saying, can you bring our case to the floor of the UN? Can you say that there is a human rights violation happening now in the United States of America? That's what we got going on here. And this would have been a tremendous Cold War embarrassment for the United States to have them be on the same list of countries as South Africa, or the way the Portuguese acted in Angola, or perhaps, as Malcolm says, the way the Russians are treating their Jews. So to have, this underclass, a segregated underclass, that doesn't look good from a Cold War perspective. So Malcolm was an international figure. And as he was coming out and joining, Martin and, had left the Nation of Islam, he was becoming a tremendous force. And so that international aspect of Malcolm never really gets talked about. And hasn't come out in this stuff. So
you're right. Nick, I know you got a bunch. I'm gonna go right to you. I just want to do two things. Maybe Nick, you can, one of you guys at some point can explain the Warren Commission to those who might not know what that is. And then two, I did not know that about Malcolm until I read this book called Operation Gladio. Anyone find Operation Gladio, it will change your life.
Are you talking about Paul Williams' book?
Paul Williams.
Yeah, he's my friend. He's our friend. He's mentioned us in subsequent books. And Paul, that is my long story, but my dad represented, one of those guys. My dad was a civil rights lawyer in the Kennedy administration.
Oh, awesome.
Okay? And he walked little kids into school, right? That kind of thing. He discovered how they were, when he was an intern, he discovered how they were fixing the voting registration in Mississippi. And that's how he first got up to meet Bobby Kennedy, because he discovered how they were asking these super tough legal questions to Black Americans. And, that was the literacy requirement. Like, he discovered that. Okay. My dad did. He then went on to become a lawyer for Nintendo. And that's how we have, Donkey Kong and the Kirby, Kirby,
no way.
I literally play Donkey Kong every day.
Okay. So that's, all right. Anyways, we had a boat named Donkey Kong. It's a long story, but he also was a lawyer for Mikhail Sindona. And this guy Sindona was the Vatican's banker. He used to give me candy bars in the lobby of the Plaza Hotel. This guy, So he's Mr. Gladio. So I'm reading this book, and I'd read other books on Gladio, but I'm like, Dad, you need to read this book. And he kept, my dad would say, I know, Nick, you've got things you want to say here, but I got to just say this.
Go for it.
I got to just tell you this. I would say I would talk my stuff. My dad would never give me the time of day on this stuff. I'd say, Dad, who killed Kennedy? He'd be like, 3 words, Lee Harvey Oswald. He'd be like, all right, come on. And then one day I started talking about the Masons just out of kind of nowhere. And he goes, you are a kindergartner where it comes to the Masons. I have a PhD when it comes to the Masons. And I'm like, oh, really? And
this is right. Let's go.
He wouldn't really tell me, but he's talking about, Chris, Propaganda Due, which was the Masonic group that the CIA had restarted because Mussolini had banned the Masons. Mm-hmm. They restarted the Masons as a kind of meeting clearinghouse for where military, intelligence, press, clergy, all these people, and they laundered the money. Of course, they fund all these projects by selling drugs in Harlem and laundering the money through the Vatican Bank. Yep. And it's just like, I have to say, I was pounding him back reading that book because it was the best.
Me too.
It was so ugly. And I'm like, and my dad's client, now my dad, in fairness to my dad, he was assigned to, after 68 and he'd become cynical and he went to work in private practice and he got assigned this terrible case where he had to prevent the extradition of Mikhail Sindona and some other things. And it really wrecked him. And he had to flee an assassination. The judge that they had dinner with, they go back to their hotel. My dad's partner starts knocking on his door 5 minutes later. Says, we got to go. That guy was just shot. And so they had to flee Italy and go to Switzerland. So my dad was like a young lawyer. He was just doing a thing. I'm sure he didn't understand any of what he was really involved in. So anyway, but I think later he came to realize I don't even want to know.
We need more Atticus Finches. So kudos to your dad. And the thing I hate about this book is that you can't talk to about anybody. You sound like you're a conspiracy theorist, which is a weaponized word.
Gladio was acknowledged by the Italian courts, the German courts. It was a big deal that was coming out. And then the first Iraq war, the Gulf War happened and it got cleared out of the headlines.
You asked about the Warren Commission. You wanted an explanation of the Warren Commission.
I was gonna let Nick explain it.
No. Let me go. So like I said, I got a more general, non-specific, question that it's more about, personality and things like that. But let's talk about the Warren Commission and then we'll get into my question.
Just so the audience knows why that's such an important comment you made.
Yeah.
So the Warren Commission is the commission that was set up in the wake of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. And there were calls for an investigation. So Johnson said, okay, we're going to, have this commission and he's going to chair it by, he begs Earl Warren, who was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, to chair it. And then lo and behold, who does he bring on to kind of then help set it all up and be the chief, run the investigations, is none other than the fired CIA chief, Alan Dulles, who Kennedy fired over the Bay of Pigs debacle. So now he's bringing back the CIA guy who Kennedy fired to run the commission looking into the assassination of JFK.
Yeah. And he's got Gerald Ford on there, who Newsweek called the CIA's band in Congress, and he was an FBI spy, basically, for Hoover. The whole thing is packed. There were a few people who objected and who distanced themselves. Some of whom ended up dead.
They brought on a bunch of attorneys who may or may not have been honest attorneys, but they were not criminal investigators. So therefore,
as staff, you mean?
Staff, the staff attorneys in the main were not criminal investigators. So, you could send them anywhere to do something and they may or may not have done their best, but it wasn't their bailiwick. They didn't know how to conduct a criminal investigation.
And they took it all from the FBI.
And they took their cue from not only the FBI, they took their cue from whatever people told them to go off and do. And then, of course, one of the lawyers was a man by the name of Arlen Specter, who became the senator from the state of Pennsylvania. And of course, he's the one who came up with the famous magic bullet theory, the idea that one bullet went into JFK, kind of went all over the place, then bounced out of JFK and hit Arlen Specter.
And hit Governor Connolly.
Hit Governor
One bullet,
Connolly.
7 wounds.
Yeah.
Lost very little mass, even though there was a ton of metal deposited in everyone's bodies. that's, they found it on the stretcher. There it was, basically intact.
And so it was 26 volumes, which they did not bother to index. So therefore there was no way of, it took a housewife to Sylvia Mayer who sat there and painstakingly indexed it. And there was a summary report that, was a whitewash. If you did dig into the multiple volumes, which you had to go to the Library of Congress to read initially, it was all there. So one of the early Kennedy assassination researchers who we had the privilege of interviewing, Vince Salandria, actually went to the National Archives. He read it and he went, no. The official story is not, what they're telling us is not the official story. And it's actually here in these books if you actually take the time to read them. So that's one of the reasons that some people, and he came to coin this phrase, false mystery.
Yeah, it's all right.
Nick, what do you always tell your son?
Wow. Well,
what do you tell your son, Nick? You tell him where to find information?
Oh, that's right. Where they hide information. And he's like, where, Dad? I said, in books. So that's it. Yeah. It's right there in front of you. All right. Yeah. Really sorry. Is. So this is the thing that I wanted to ask. And, basically it's really simple. How do you sleep at night? How do you eat during the day? How do you make friends? Right? Because I'm telling you that I've been there, but I've only been there for a short period of time. And that was post 9/11. And I don't want to get into it. There's no need to, right? Because that's another rabbit hole to go down. But I lived in that rabbit hole for a very long time. And it's kind of like Chris said, where it's like, how do you discuss these things with people without seeming like a quote unquote conspiracy theorist or seeming crazy or seeming whatever? And I was in it for, I don't know, Chris, it's probably a good 2 years or so where I watched every documentary, video, film about this. I was reading books about it. Oh yeah, man. Zeitgeist. But I was in it and I was watching the video. And I have an engineering background, right? So I'm looking at things that make no sense in the world of physics or engineering or, human history. And I just found myself at that point where it is difficult to sleep. You're dreaming about these things. You wake up and you see something on TV and you immediately begin to question. And the people that are around you, family, friends, and others aren't necessarily as deep down the rabbit hole as you are.
Right.
So if you try to take them there, right, it can be a challenge in that relationship. So being so deep down the rabbit hole as you folks are in the variety of content that you get into, how do you manage?
Yeah. Well, let me answer that real quick. And then let me just say, Nick, I totally appreciate your struggle. The struggle is real. And particularly around, I'll just tell you full disclosure. We've done a lot of work for the group that at least used to be known as Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. We did many videos for them and interviews and all kinds of things, Building 7 stuff. So I know where you're coming from. And, that was a particularly tough time, but let me just say that I think that people have to, grow up and see this stuff. So I was very pleased that before my dad passed, I was able to show him a version of the prologue. And he went from, as I told you, saying 3 words, Lee Harvey Oswald, to seeing the 4 men stories together and saying they draw strength from each other. He saw, as a lawyer and litigator, he saw, there's a pattern here. These guys, so our mission has been to bridge these worlds, right? To do what you're talking, to somehow make, to dress conspiracy theory up like a lady and bring her out on the town and give her, the background, the kind of bona fides. And because my feeling is that we can't get anywhere unless we become mature enough to look at these things. We will not get anywhere as a society as long as we are trapped in, say, that Republican Democrat dialectic or the idea that there isn't a permanent state, a national security state that is guiding our lives in a completely undemocratic way, guiding the course of world events. And, it's only because there are people like you looking into these things that they don't have their way completely. So I think more and more now there's an awareness of this. That's why, in my view, say with the recent Trump thing. They're basically leaving Easter eggs. They're basically telling you the Secret Service stood down because, in my view, they're setting up a narrative of the deep state versus Trump because it makes him a hero in the minds of the Trump of MAGA people, right? And right. I understand that. I feel like, because I am on the side of a populist, of a multiracial populist, whatever you want to call it, small d Democratic, small c conservative movement. But I think that every once in a while they give us demagogues to capture that movement. And what better way to do that, in my view, than to make a little movie on stage, do the lawfare thing, make it really seem like he's beleaguered by the powers that be. And then it's like, he must be on our side because the deep state wants to kill him. So they're showing us very obvious. Oh, where was the Secret Service? Not on the roof. It was too hot. It was sloped. It was this. It was that. I mean, it's all ridiculous. And you're meant to see that it's ridiculous. That's a whole other kind of meta discussion, but I think they're letting us in on that. Okay. That's my feeling. I think when you say, obviously you can't let this stuff overwhelm your whole life and you have to do other things and not, but I feel like it's imperative, like time is running out for people to understand this history. And by the way, and our focus is on what these guys were doing at the end of their lives. That's the key. If you can emulate what Malcolm and Martin and John and Bobby were trying to accomplish, if you can work towards those same goals and realize that they were men of faith, of conviction, who knew that they could be killed, but did it anyway. They did it anyway. That's the key thing. They kept marching on. That's the kind of courage, 4 died trying. That's what we call it, right? That's the kind of courage people need to, don't worry if you are going to, be ostracized. Don't worry, find gentle ways of bringing your family in. Okay. But the fact is people have to become researchers. They have to do their own research, something they were discouraged from doing during the past 4 years during the COVID thing. So, they have to think for themselves. And if you don't, I hope, Lewis Lapham was all about that. And, that's why he did not hew to any political wing of any particular side. He brought out stuff that we felt was truthful from the point of view of writers who were speaking in, through what they understood to be true. And we're taking moral stances. That's what he cared about. And that's what is the mark of anything that is worthwhile. So that's what we got to encourage people to do. You've got to think about it. It may be ugly, but you got to look. You got to bear witness. That's the thing. That's what, it's about being a witness to the unspeakable, as Jim Douglas says. You have to look at a video of Building 7 coming down and realize they're telling you that they brought the buildings down. Okay?
They did.
They're telling you.
They did. Yeah.
They said it out loud.
Yeah.
They said it out loud. When they bring a 47-story, if someone who's watching hasn't seen it, just Google World Trade Center Building 7 and watch the government video of a 47-story government building that had the mayor's command center, the CIA offices, the SEC offices. There are all kinds of files in that building. And just watch it go at 5:20 in the afternoon, not having been hit by anything. There's no way that happens without them doing it. Okay. They're free fall speed, as the other buildings came at free fall, which should not have happened. They turned to powder. This is obvious stuff. We have to wake up from these spells and we have to look at this and say, they kill the people that care about us, that are trying to lead their people out of this madness and into a more loving and equitable and free world. They kill those people, but it's our duty to become those people. To the more of us there are, the harder we are to kill.
Here. And before we get into me too, before we get into some things we should know, why don't we we've been teasing the audience long enough. Why don't we play this trailer for Four died trying.
What kind of a peace do I mean, and what kind of a peace do we seek? Not a Pax Americana, enforced on the world by American weapons of war. I am talking about genuine peace, the kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living.
People in power have misused it, and now there has to be a change, and a better world has to be built.
Bombs in Vietnam exploded home. They destroyed the dream and possibility for a decent America.
Cannot continue to deny and postpone the demands of our own people while spending billions in the name of freedom elsewhere around the globe.
Life will go on, paying our taxes and cutting the lawn. What's on TV? Who won the game? All that's familiar will seem much the same. We're trapped on the freeway by daily life. You might start to feel that something's not right.
Lee Harvey Oswald, alone and for reasons all his own,
I'm just a patsy.
shot and killed President Kennedy.
Yeah, I'm more tense still.
Take a sleeping tablet.
The evidence clearly points to one man, and one man alone, James Earl Ray.
We just must not tolerate the sway of violent men.
I am firmly convinced that Sirhan, acting alone, killed Robert F. Kennedy.
To the best of your knowledge, Chief, how many men were in on this conspiracy?
I wouldn't know that.
But at least two, you think? That's correct.
An organized plot by sinister interests.
Even now, the whole story has not been told.
The truth hasn't reigned, but it's so sweet, and now the kids look, what does it mean?
That was incredible. And thank you for allowing us to share the trailer with the audience. Everybody should go out and see it. Is there a place to see it yet?
If you go to our website, fordiedtrying.com, and you click the button, get it now, you'll see the various platforms we're on. We're on Amazon, we're on Google Play, we're on Apple TV, we're on all the various platforms. And that's the easiest way to get to it, is just go to our website, fordiedtrying.com, and hit get it now.
Just the prologue is available. But this will be a cycle of films. Chapter 1 was available to our Patreon people, but we are dealing with a battle right now with murky, creepy forces, and we don't understand what they're trying to do.
Oh no.
It could be our friends in the national security state. We don't know. It could just be greed and madness. We don't know. Ignorance. But in any case, we're fighting that back. Chapter 1 is a very interesting chapter. It kind of mirrors the period we just lived through. It's called The World as It Was. It's about the McCarthy period. Did you guys see it? I don't know if we sent it to you. If we sent you a link. Well, we'll send you a link.
I haven't seen it. I saw the Trump doc and a bunch of other stuff, but I haven't seen that. And I've seen the trailer.
Did you see the?
Obviously.
And have you seen the? Okay, so have you guys seen the prologue, the full prologue yet? No,
I watched the prologue.
But chapter 1 is a short film, about 38 minutes, and Oliver Stone, gave it a rave review, as did a ton of other people. But it's about the Red Scare. Okay. And Oliver's in our films. He will be in these films. He's in both the prologue and chapter 1. He plays a prominent role in chapter 1, talking about the McCarthy period, this period of unbelievable fear and mind-numbing, censorship and paranoia and fear. This is how they stop. If you were in favor of civil rights, you were a commie. If you were in favor of freedom of speech, you were a commie. If this is how they suppressed change. It was as an attack on the American people. Okay. And when you hear some of the things that went on and some of the scare tactics they were using, it will remind you of the COVID period, like the lockdown period. It will scream that to you. So that is, I think, a very important kind of the way history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Like that is that right there in chapter 1, called The World as It Was. And then our next chapter, which I'm working on, we're all working on feverishly right now, is really about the origins of Jack Kennedy. Yes, born with a silver spoon in his mouth, but with a difference. He came from this Irish American background, which is very actually important. It would be more obvious if he was black or Jewish or something. You'd be like, oh, right. Okay. I get it. But he's like, people forget, like, the Irish were like a despised minority in America, right? They were like, like no Irish need apply. They were under this colonial oppression for centuries, and the Kennedys didn't forget that. And so many people, when they get up, they pull the ladder up, but something about what Joe Kennedy, for all of his issues, and he had issues, the guy who made all the money, however he really did it. But he certainly was a movie mogul. He certainly was in the liquor business. Whether he was a bootlegger or not is up to debate. But, he was chairman of the SEC and ambassador to England. Anyway, he made a lot of money, and he basically said to his kids, now you have to go back and you have to do service to the world. Mm-hmm. They took that stuff seriously. And, the eldest the eldest son of Joe Kennedy, Joe Jr., died. John picks up the gauntlet and, off he goes. He has all these health problems. He nearly dies during the war. He has these experiences during World War II that make him realize that, these people in the Polynesian islands, they don't want to have colonial masters. They save his life after his PT boat is rammed. They save his life. And he's like, you know what? Then one of them came to the White House to kind of, give him a hug and say, you go, when he became president. And, this informs Jack Kennedy. When you start to realize, everyone's like, oh, he's a cold warrior, or he's a cold warrior who may be turned towards peace at the end. But all the way through, he is about freedom for all these colonial countries and for the individual. And he is about a just and equitable world. And yes, the thing that terrifies the ruling class so much is, even though he increases regular defense spending, he sees it as a way to give people jobs. He's about ending the Cold War, and he's about withdrawing from Vietnam. And that is like, oh, okay, no, he's got to go. And they've got their boy, Lyndon, who, by the way, we are going to completely change how everyone sees Lyndon Johnson. He is not a civil rights hero. He is about as evil a man as you can possibly imagine, who didn't give a damn about any of that stuff and did it all for political expediency. And he is essentially the embodiment of the military-industrial complex, especially the western southern part of it. Mm-hmm. And, he's working for, big oil, and, he gets, the Brown Brothers, Brown Brothers harem, and he basically creates them. Brown and Root. Brown and Root. Brown and Root. He creates them, and they create him. I mean, he is a creature of the national security state. And, wow. And these oil interests. So in any case, and they know he's right there. He knows exactly what's going to happen, and, is part of that whole thing. And he's ready to take the mantle and take us full steam ahead into Vietnam, which ruins this country. Wow. Ruins this country.
We're still living with it.
And we're still living with it.
Well, in many other countries.
And, not to mention other countries, not to mention the countries. They probably, in some ways, culturally, they probably did better. I mean, we as having the crime on our hands, it's something about that stain. Anyway.
And all four men share something in common, which made them really, really scary to the state, which all four men wanted peace. So as John was saying, Kennedy was going to get us out, not escalate the war in Vietnam. His brother Bobby was going to not only investigate his brother's death, but make sure we got out of Vietnam. Martin Luther King was assassinated a year to the day from his speech at Riverside Church, where he talked about the evil triplets of militarism, poverty, and I always forget the third one, John.
The giant triplets of extreme materialism, militarism, and racism.
Exactly. And not only that, he was going to do something even scarier. He was planning the Poor People's March, and the Poor People's March was not just black people. It was black and white people and yellow people and green people and everybody coming to DC and knocking on the doors of their congressmen and senators and not leaving until they got answers and they got justice and they got reforms of the way things were done. And they really hate it when opposing groups come together. They try and pit everybody against each other. But when we overcome that and come together, they hate that. And of course, we talked about Malcolm X, and Malcolm X was really early against the war in Vietnam. Really early, he came out against the war in Vietnam. So if you are for peace, it is not good for your health. Not at all.
Not if you're charismatic.
Which sounds so asymmetrical. It's insane. But, this is all very good. I hope everybody watches this. This is going to be just such an excellent and necessary film series. But
wait, Chris, before we bring in Papa Bear, I've got one thing to say. You ready?
Please.
All right. Whoa. Huh. Good God, y'all. What it is good for? Nothing. Sing it again.
Exactly. All right. We're going to go on the road, Nick.
There you go, man. It's me and you all day, every day. Let's go.
You can put on your black hat and then change that to peace. What is it good for? Apparently.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Producer Papa Bear, bring us some things we should know.
Okay. Yeah. I'm glad y'all went back to my generation.
Of course.
All right.
All right, PB.
Here we go. This fits right into everything you're talking about.
Okay.
What is the name of the oldest film to have multiple U.S. presidential assassinations as its subject? And in what year was it released?
Oh, boy. Okay, so do you guys want to go first, John and Libby, or should me and Nick go first?
The oldest film to have multiple U.S. assassinations.
Executive Action is
That's suddenly with Frank Sinatra. That's only one. Oldest. Are we talking like? Can we narrow it down? Are we talking like Cecil B. DeMille old, or are we talking how old are we talking here? Can you give us a hint?
How old is film?
Yeah, exactly. Wait, PB, hold on. Ask it again, because you said.
Wait a second. Does it have the Kennedy assassination in it?
No.
Okay, that's actually a big hint then.
Yeah, because you said, wait, say it again. Ask the question again. We need to make sure we get it.
What is the name of the oldest film to have multiple U.S. presidential assassinations as its subject? And in what year was it published?
Okay, so that's a big part. Thank you, Nick, for asking me to read it again, because it's as its subject.
Yeah.
So the whole film title and everything is going to be about.
You didn't say presidential.
It's not necessarily a documentary about assassanations.
Right. My guess is the Manchurian Candidate.
Assassination.
Can I guess the Manchurian Candidate?
You can guess that.
It's not going to be right, is it? Nick, what's your guess?
You can do whatever you want. I have no clue. I'm like, multiple assassinations.
But there's been multiple Manchurian Candidates, but it's probably not old enough, knowing PB.
The reason multiples in there is because it's not about one presidential assassination.
Right.
It's about more than one presidential assassination.
I want to take mine back now.
Yeah. No, I'm stumped. I'm
totally stumped.
I'm going to admit, I'm stumped.
Nick, you got something?
1923. But besides that, I have no.
That's a good number.
If it's 23, then you're talking about who was the president? Not Grover Cleveland, but the one before him that got assassinated. Then you're talking about Lincoln.
McKinley. And then you got
McKinley, Lincoln.
There's some others. They're all most of them.
Wait. And again, he said assassination.
Garfield.
Because Andrew Jackson didn't die. Yeah, Garfield. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know the name of it. It's
go ahead, Papa Bear. What is it?
Yeah. It's 1923, and the film is called Assassinations.
I'm going to go 1946. I'm going to double up.
All right.
The film is called The Martyred Presidents.
Oh, wow. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah.
the martyred.
This is something we definitely should know.
And we'll have the sources when we put this in the newsletter. We always put these.
That's a very good tip. Thank you. What year is the film?
The year
1901.
1901. Look at her.
Yeah, look at that. She's looking it up, Googling.
1 minute. It's 1 minute long.
Is it 1 minute long?
It was a 1 minute, 4 second black and white silent film shot at 15 frames per second by Edwin S. Porter for Thomas A. Edison Incorporated as a part of the Last Days of a President films of McKinley and the Pan American Exposition at 1901.
Man, how do you get multiple assassinations in a 1 minute film?
I don't know. Maybe we should ask our boy that did.
I've seen the film.
You know,
it doesn't take long to see it.
Yeah, it sure. Libby had the right idea because she asked, and Papa Bear didn't hear it. Does it have sound? She asked, was it a silent film?
Talking.
And
is it a talkie?
Yeah. She was right.
All this, but,
so Libby, we're going to give Libby.
Film.
Libby was the closest by far, just by asking that.
Closest to describing it after we narrowed down the presidents.
That's correct. Papa Bear, you did it again.
I was the closest in the date, though. You know,
Emil Gerardo. That's what I was thinking of, by the way, Nick. Emil Gerardo.
Like charades,
he can make a 1 minute film.
That's
What's next?
No, that's it.
We've had enough of you.
There's a whole big. There's a description that takes longer of the film, a tagline. It takes longer to read than the film lasts.
Hey,
Papa Bear,
that's
before
another
you
thing
go,
we should know. I like
Papa
that
Bear,
one. That's trivia.
Before you go, and by the way, yes, this is definitely a thing we should know. You did it again. But before you go, do you want to explain to the people and give a shout out to the background there in the restaurant, that background?
Oh, well, this is a entrance to a restaurant in Madrid.
No, Barcelona, I thought.
No, I believe this one's Madrid.
No, it's Barcelona.
Okay. I remember it being the vegan one. Where was that?
Yeah, Barcelona.
Yeah. Okay. It's a vegan restaurant. I believe they had a air hockey table in there, didn't they?
They did. They had air hockey, foosball, air hockey, ping pong. They had a bunch of stuff, and it's called what is the name of this restaurant? We got to put it in the show notes, give them a shout out so they don't sue us for using the background. You know what I mean?
How many times have we been sued?
Because it's sue you for
that's in the vault. But
but that's my photo. I own it.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I was going to say that background will really stand out. But I think it's called Vegan Junkie or something like that. It's something crazy. It has a crazy name.
It had a crazy name.
Yeah. But anyway, shout out to them. Shout out to you, Papa Bear. That is definitely a thing we should know. And we definitely appreciate that. Now,
you're welcome.
Now going into we have a new thing, Nick, don't we? We have a new thing.
We do. Oh yeah. We're about to jump into
and this.
I'm gonna say it. Can I put it out there? I'm gonna say it. I want to say it.
You want to vault into this?
I want to say it. I want to say
well, you say
we're about to do the pole vault with intern Sam. You know what I'm saying? So so let's dive into the vault.
We say that in honor of the Paralympics. We'll be in the full throes of the Olympics when this publishes. It's just like Sam, when he gets on, intern Sam is about to come on and share polls. I want to just explain to the audience what this is. We release polls constantly on our YouTube channel, questions and polls and different types of posts. And they get a lot of feedback and engagement. And we thought, hey, why not bring it to the podcast and let everybody know the answer to these things without having to work so hard to find the exact one. So we pull 3 that are either relevant to the time or the most engagement or maybe the most relevant in the moment. And we share them. Now, Sam, I want you to know this. Also, all you guys know this. I have been on an absolute media tear recently. A media tear. I just wanted to share this as Sam gets ready. These are the movies, just the movies I've watched in the last 30 to 45 days. You ready for this? Dune.
We're going to be here for a while.
Dune 2. Sing Sing, which should be up for movie of the year. and Coleman Domingo should get Best Actor nom for that. Twisters, love the tornadoes. Movie doesn't make sense. Long Legs, great marketing. The Assistant, The Last Black Man in San Francisco. Finally watched that. Yeah. Wow. Mind was blown. Great movie.
Do you know there's trivia to go with that one that relates to what we've been talking about? That's done by the son of a man by the name of David Talbot. And David Talbot wrote two really great books, one Brothers and the other called The Devil's Chessboard, on the assassination of JFK. The Devil's Chessboard is all about.
He's the co-founder of Salon, David Talbot, and David Talbot's father was a Hollywood, like 1930s movie matinee idol. And now his son is this great filmmaker.
That's incredible because the writing on it's first of all, it's Small World, but the writing on this was just, I don't know if I've ever seen a movie quite like it. I mean, it's really creative. And Jonathan Majors, shout out to Jonathan Majors, who's apparently in a turn of absolute comedy is being given a Perseverance Award.
He got it already.
Yeah. He got already a Perseverance Award, and he had to persevere over just the shadiness of that whole situation and the idea that he'd be judged in that situation as he was being chased by a woman down the street. Anyway, I'm glad he persevered. But he was fantastic in this movie. Kinds of Kindness. So it's a New Yorker movie. Not for everybody. Being advertised like gangbusters in France. I mean, it's everywhere. You cannot get on a train. You cannot walk down the street without seeing a poster of Kinds of Kindness. Dandelion, Nicole Siegel. Shout out to Nicole Siegel, indie filmmaker. Beautiful. She shot this on 16 millimeter Kodak film, and it is big and beautiful. And for filmmakers out there that are listening, the trick with that is basically the actors don't get to see their playback. So when you tell the actors that you're going to shoot on film, they're like, oh, awesome. It's an art film. They're really, really excited. They're pumped up. And then they get on set and realize they can't see their performance back. And so as simple as it might sound, it's actually kind of terrifying for a serious actor to.
Though I have to say, I did work on a film called Slam, which you guys may know. It had Saul Williams. It won Sundance in 98, and I was actually the video tap guy, among other things, on that film. Mark Levin, my former boss. And so we were shooting 16 on an Aton, and we had something called a video tap. And it would go out to a little clamshell 8mm tape recorder, a high 8 recorder. Yeah. And we could watch playback. You would see yourself through the gate. So you'd see like this flicker, and it was black and white. But we would watch dailies that way at night. I mean, so I don't know. Maybe you can certainly tell the actors that you don't have that technology. Right. But they did used to have a video tap.
Well, I kind of know Nicole a little bit. And so I might reach out to her and be like, hey, next time you do that, you can, it's not the perfect solution, but now it's 25 years later. She probably could have done it. It's probably a budget constraint or a time setup constraint, whatever. But she just said to her actors, you have to trust me that I got it. And what an interesting thing to communicate on set in the moment for those that have made film. That's like a big deal. All right. Anyway, wrapping this up, A Quiet Place Origins, not as good as the other two. And I rewatched Her, and it is even better today than it was in 2014, 2013 when it released. It is more relevant. Joaquin Phoenix is walking around in AirPods, guys. Those didn't exist then. They called all the technology that they called out with the AI in your pocket and the camera showing it the world. All of that spot on. We have all that.
Here it is.
Yeah. A decade later, they nailed it.
Well, and it might as well be The Simpsons, because The Simpsons, predicts everything. Come on.
Yes.
And
wait, Chris. Let me give my list. Go ahead.
Well, hold on. I got one more for Prince Proud Bear. I rewatched since I watched it as a child. A Cat on the Hot Tin Roof. Elizabeth Taylor and Paul Newman. Rewatched it last night, and boy, the way they talk to women in that movie, you just can't do it anymore. But it was good to watch. It was good to watch the father and son thing go back and forth. Okay, go ahead.
No, I'm going to read my list of films that I've watched in the past several days. Okay. Deep Throat, Behind the Green Door, The Devil and Miss Jones.
Classics. Good for you.
Go for it.
I'm totally kidding.
You said this is the Get Naked show.
Exactly. Yeah. He did say this is an adult.
When I was a baby, Nick, my mom and my aunt thought they were going to go see Flash Gordon, and it was Flesh Gordon. And the very first scene of the movie in the theater is a giant penis coming across the screen, and they ran us out of there. True story.
Yeah,
so you got to be careful.
Yeah,
I can see that. I'm glad to clarify that all the time.
Yeah, Debbie Does Dallas is not about the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. You know what I'm saying? Right?
Okay, let's bring in intern Sam.
Let's bring in intern Sam, who has no clue what I'm talking about.
None at all.
Hey, when I was a freshman in college, during freshman week, they took you to a movie, and they took you to a couple of porn movies. That's what you saw. Dallas and Deep Throat.
Yep, see?
Respectable in those days.
I love it. Those are classics, man. If you look up classic, I mean, they're going to come up. They're going to come up. It is what it is. Yeah.
Now, the audience is probably thinking this right now, and you're absolutely correct. Sam is just about 14 years old. Now, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. This is a right to work state that we're in. We're in Tennessee, right to work state. No, I'm kidding. Sam's a man.
That's right.
He just has a baby face. He's very pretty. And we brought him on because we brought in intern Sam to bring in the female audience. You got to bring in the female audience. Come on now. We know what the world wants.
That's right. That's right.
Not us old dudes. Let's go, Sam. Yeah, tell us about your polls.
Okay, so I have a few polls here today, and they've garnered hundreds of responses. So they're from a sizable audience. So we're getting an accurate figure here, but we'll just jump right in. The first poll we have is pretty simple. It's just, how do you think summer 2024 has been for film? So we'll take a look at what the voters think, and then we'll kind of open it up to discussion. So coming in at first is a resounding great with 68% of the votes. Then a pretty good at 16%. Then meh at 8%, so just sort of mediocre. And then finally not good at 7%.
Okay, I'll take that.
Which I think is pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're being honest, there's this box office can't compare to last summer's. IMAX just reported they're 9% down for the year. IMAX theaters. So, I mean, that 9% is a lot because it equates to billions of dollars. But then again, we had Barbieheimer last year. So how do you even duplicate that? I don't know. What do you think, John, Libby?
We've been too nose. I'm embarrassed to say I have not been keeping my finger on the pulse. You've just mentioned some films. Is there anything good that we should go watch? What's
Sing Sing's way up there. I think if you can find Sing Sing in a theater, that's great. I think Dandelion was really surprisingly sweet and warm and good, and it is in theater, so you can watch that as well. And if you just want to, Nick, I know what you're thinking. Like if you just want to be entertained and just have a good time, there's a lot of movies out that are like that are going to give you a scare. From Twisters to Long Legs to Maxine, whatever. So
where are you guys located? Where are you guys? Are you on the West Coast?
They're Central Standard Time.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in beautiful Nashville, Tennessee, and Nick is in beautiful Gaithersburg, Maryland, in DC, close to DC.
Oh, okay. So, do you guys, are there good theaters? Because so many of the ones around me, we should do more. We should go out more and sit in the theater.
We're so busy looking at assassinations. We don't have time.
Exactly.
If you're trying to tell the tale of those 4 assassinations and you have over 130 interviews, you don't have a lot of time for
some of which are 15 hours long.
Don't have a lot of time for a lot of other stuff.
Yeah. How about this though? Do you watch documentaries while you're going through that to give you inspiration? Because I'll tell you this.
I do. Yeah.
I have been watching. So the latest things that I've been watching were the Pele documentary and the Beckham docuseries, right? And I think both of them are extremely well done, and they're not quite the same as other documentaries that I've seen. Even those two are kind of completely different from one another, but I appreciate the cinematography. I appreciate there's so many different ways that they show you these characters and allow those characters to show their emotion.
Yes.
And I mean, at some points, I mean, just sitting on their faces. So anyway, I was just wondering if that's a way that you guys get some inspiration while you're going through it. It's like, hey, put it down and watch.
Yeah, I mean, what I do, I will watch the occasional docuseries, but the only station I really have on in my house is TCM. I don't know. Do you guys have cable? I watch Turner Classic Movies. That has been my film school for the past 10, 15, however many years. I just rewatched Harold and Maude. I'm watching like on demand TCM, right? So it's free if you have that mid cable package. Right. It's basically a free channel of all the greatest films ever made.
Yep.
I mean, they're just doing a whole series on the 70s now. So I rewatched 3 Days of the Condor, which is of course the Robert Redford spy thriller. Really one of the great ones, Sidney Pollack directed. I mean, I'm watching, I'm like immersed in the classics and in that time period. They say 1939 was Hollywood's best year, and then its best decade was, say the late 60s to the late 70s. And so I'm just in that. And then, yes, I come out occasionally and watch something on, what was it, The Octopus or, some of these.
The Octopus Teacher. Yeah, that was a really good one.
Well, no, but I'm talking conspiracy film. It was.
Oh, God.
Come on, Nick.
I should have gotten that. But I will say this. Yeah, I know, right? But I'll say this for Sam, again, bringing that younger audience. I think that there is. So I asked the question earlier, like, how do you deal, right? Being in the rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I learned for myself about the rabbit hole is that you can have your head down in the sand, but you got to have one hand up. And what is that one hand up doing? It's allowing another person to pull you out every once in a while.
Right.
Because if you lose your connection to where society is, it's harder for you to connect to society through your art.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's good to get back in and watch a Twisters or watch whatever, because it says like, what are the people now watching? What are they interested in? What do they believe in? Who are their stars?
Don't get me wrong. I'm watching the guilty pleasures all the time. I also sneak a little like HBO on demand. No, believe me, I'll watch the Twisters when it comes out on demand. But I should get out into the theater. I mean, I absolutely should.
Yeah.
Well, they're pushing all their chips in on Deadpool and Wolverine. All the chips are being pushed.
Yeah, I'm going.
Well, I love the first Deadpool. I
love Ryan Reynolds. So that's got to make $1 billion.
Yeah, in my opinion. He's great. Yeah, I saw Stuntman. Stuntman was good. I thought that was pretty good.
I'm the wrong generation for you guys.
No. But you should. They're right. Keep finger on the pulse.
Exactly.
Okay, so what?
All right. What's the next one? What do we got, Sam?
What's next on the poll?
All right, intern Sam, drop it on us.
Okay, so the next poll, it kind of goes in a little bit hand in hand with the first one, but it goes back a little bit further. So it's just, what is the best horror film of 2024? So Chris, you brought it up earlier, but Longlegs was our winner at 60% of the votes, followed by In a Violent Nature at 24%, and then Maxine at only 9%, which I actually found kind of surprising. Because I know that one. Very popular film, especially right now. And then finally, Late Night with the Devil with 7%.
And that's being hated on because they used AI in one of the scenes or two of the scenes. It got revealed. This is very similar to when that dog movie came out and then PETA basically revealed that the dog was abused on set. We don't know if that's true or not, but just the accusation alone is enough to kill the film's opening weekend. And that's what happened with the last film. What's it called again, Sam? The Night with the Devil, or Interview with the Devil. What's it called?
Late Night
with the Devil. I don't know why I forgot that just right now. Yeah, so that movie's probably better than it's getting credit for, but the generation that and the filmmaking sort of nerds that and this like horror films are a genre film that where the viewers are incredibly passionate, and so if you violate one of their codes, they're going to sort of boycott your film. But with Long Legs, I think it speaks, Nick, to the power of marketing. This is one of the best rollout campaigns for a horror film I've seen in a long time.
I keep seeing it all the time. Like, it's just every time I turn on something, there's Long Legs. I'm like, really? I'm not a horror dude. So like, I don't know why it's coming to me, but they're just pushing it to me anyway. They're just like, no, you're going to get this. And at some point you're going to watch it because we're going to make you watch it.
It's a masterclass. I think if any filmmaker, independent filmmakers watching this and they're trying to figure out how to put together their trailer package and their key art package, look at Long Legs. Look at what they did. Look how they cut it. How about the brilliance of never showing Nicolas Cage's character in the trailer, but you hear his voice?
Oh, yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really,
well done.
really,
It's
really
extremely
smart.
well done.
They give you the social credibility. They give you the tight cuts. They give you an incredible score. I mean, the score on the trailer is creepy. And then you get to the theater and you realize, overhyped. And that, Go ahead. John, I was just saying that only happens when you raise everyone's expectations really high. I think had the promo been worse, we'd have been like, that's pretty good. That's better than the hype.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I have to say, Chris, since you brought up Nick Cage, I just want to say I know no one asked, but I was going to say my favorite horror film from back in the day, just to bring people to some history here, is the original, not the Nick Cage, Wicker Man. So I didn't know that you guys were talking about a Nick Cage film. And it's like, and we all love Nick Cage and various things that Nick Cage has done, but he did a version of the Wicker Man, which is unwatchable. But have you guys seen Sam? Have you seen the original Wicker Man? Sam?
I've not. My dad wants me to. He's brought it up. We usually watch, we plan it out to do kind of like a gauntlet around Halloween.
Okay.
And so it's been on the list before.
So once you got to get yourself really scared beforehand about the stuff that Nick and I were talking about, and let it kind of drift into the occult, and and this whole idea of karmic cleansing, and basically the revelation of the method, them telling you what they're going to do to you before they do it, all this stuff, and then you will see the first, maybe the best, maybe the only real horror musical. That is The Wicker Man. And it is seamless.
I didn't know it was a musical.
Seamless. You know what? If I didn't tell you it was a musical, you wouldn't even necessarily notice it as a musical, because the music is so seamlessly woven in. It is a perfect movie. It is and it's the famous, Christopher, who's the guy who always plays Dracula? Anyway, that was his favorite movie that he was ever in, and it is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I don't think they make anything like it.
Yeah, now original Wicker. You talk about marketing, bro. Like now I'm going to see that movie. Like it's
word of mouth, holy grail.
Yeah,
check it out.
Okay, so Sam, thank you for sharing your polls with us. Can I brag on you for a second, Sam, as well?
Absolutely.
He's like, yeah, why not? Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, Sam watches a movie a day. His list in knowledge and film recall rivals anybody you will ever meet.
That's great. Good. Well,
so,
you got Sam, get on TCM, man. You would balance out the new with the old.
I will.
I do it. I essentially do that too. Either early in the morning or late at night. I will watch usually a classic, but sometimes something, like a Deadpool or, but I think that's very important. Good for you. I think.
Yeah. So John watches, just so you know, Sam. So John will watch, Deadpool, and then he'll watch Caligula. I mean, it's just,
Did Sam even know Caligula? I haven't seen Caligula since I was Sam's age.
Exactly.
Good old Caligula.
Yeah.
Bob Guccione. Bob Guccione produced that movie.
I tell you, man, and there's so many stars in that movie, it'll just blow your mind.
So many stars.
There was a 24-hour movie theater I went to college outside Boston, and there was a 24-hour movie theater in Cambridge in Harvard Square, and it was the porn theater. But if you missed the last buses out of Cambridge back to the various colleges, that's the only place you could spend the night, was in the porn theater. I saw all of them.
Oh, damn, Libby. I never knew this about you. Look, wow, I just got a new fact.
Another thing you should know.
Oh, my God.
This is what we do on the Make It podcast.
I think it was only $1 to go into the theater, and like everybody, all different kinds of people were in there.
That's right.
That's all you ever spent.
I got to make one last pitch because you just brought up something that, and I'm thinking now of a film that you can never unsee that you saw. That you always talk about how I'm going to bring it up. I'm going to tell the world.
She said, no, don't do
that film is just awful.
Okay, but it's a very important film.
Okay.
And it's by the great Italian filmmaker Pasolini. Does anyone know what I'm going to say?
Are you going to say The Holy Mountain?
I'm not.
Okay.
No. Does anyone know?
Because you can't unsee that movie either.
I'm going to say, and this film will rake your mind over the coals.
Don't watch it. Don't watch it. You can never forget it. You can never unsee it.
Yeah, but you need to see it now.
No, you don't.
And it's called Sallow, which is based on the Marquis de Sade's 120 Days of Sodom, a book so wicked and long that I could only read the first 12 pages before I put it down in total horror and revulsion.
So it's worse. So it's worse than Caligula by like 10x. I mean,
no.
Caligula is a breakfast. Caligula is a light tea compared to the horrible meal of vileness that is Sallow.
Let me tell you something about Sallow. It's a very well-made film, so you will get drawn into it. Don't fall for it. Turn it off.
and let me tell you this, because we're into this conspiracy world. Pasolini was a progressive Italian filmmaker. Sallow is his dissection of fascist Italian society during the war. He updates the Marquis de Sade story, sets it during the period of fascist Italy, and he was a real fighter for, human emancipation. And he was murdered.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he's one of the filmmakers, and there are a number of them out there, actually, including a guy who did a film on Gladio by the name of Alan Frankovich, who did a 3-part series on the CIA. He did a 3-part series on Gladio, and he was on his way to doing a film on TWA Flight 800 when his briefcase was taken from him at the airport, handed back, it had some glop on it, and the next thing you know, he had a heart attack. He was heart attacked. But that's Alan Frankovich, a documentary filmmaker of great note. Pasolini was murdered in Italy for the kinds of things that he was working on. So he was a courageous and brave filmmaker, and Sallow is a hard-hitting social satire that also happens to be one of the most horrific and uncomfortable things you'll ever see.
Don't watch it on a full stomach.
Yeah, well, I don't think I'm going to watch it on an empty stomach. I think I'm good. I think you guys have played it up enough where I'm like, no, thank you. I'm good.
Nick, you need to keep your palate clean.
Yeah, man.
Intern Sam, thank you for your polls.
Wait till you're older, Sam.
Yeah.
You're right.
I'll see you soon. Appreciate it. Speaking, of course, brother. Speaking of keeping your palate clean, why don't you get some of this concern, this evil, this doubt, whatever it might be, off your chest, Nick, and hit us with you know what?
I don't know. Could you be talking about a culture check?
You guys have fun on this show.
Yeah, I'm trying to get him to, I gotta make him laugh, cry, cough, pass out, whatever we can do.
Try not to
because
laugh.
You know it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
You can't help it.
So Nick, hit us with this week's culture check.
Yeah, this week's culture check. So we had a conversation with Dr. Christian Gregory, the son of the late great Dick Gregory. And he said something. He said, people on social media love conflict. And I think he said social media, but I think generally he meant everybody. People love conflict. And he started out talking about, how he gave an example. He's like, when my dad met Malcolm X was like, what's up with all these comedians thinking they can talk politics? You know what I'm saying? Think they can be, in the social movement and not realizing who Dick was at the time, right? So everyone, according to Christian, said everyone wanted to talk about that, right? This conflict between Malcolm X and Dick Gregory, and it was this big thing. But he's like, but nobody wants to talk about the fact that after that, they became very good friends and they were friends for a very long time. And in fact, when Dick Gregory passed, Malcolm X's daughter spoke at his funeral. So no one talks about that. And as Chris mentioned, he was like, Nick, clean your palate, keep your palate clean, because Chris knows I don't like watching horror movies because I don't like seeing people get chopped up and all this nastiness. I don't watch dramas and thrillers at night because I want my soul to be at rest when I go to sleep. I want to watch something happy and uplifting. Right. But, and here's the culture check when it comes to documentary. I don't get to see a lot of just positive, uplifting documentaries. Is this because the ones that really sell are the ones that are steeped in conflict, and those are the ones that make it to the top, and the other ones that are just positive? I'm telling you, some of the stuff that, our folks who made The Best Chef in the World, right? Breakwater Studios, right? They make these films they're short films more often than not. Ben Proudfoot and Breakwater Studios. They make these positive things, but I don't get enough of that in my diet, right? And I think it's because there you go, And then what's the other one? The Queen of Basketball is another Ben Proudfoot
I think
film.
the sports documentaries will give you some more uplifting stories because they're more about the underdog, for example, who then achieves. So it gives you something fun to watch about. The problem is that,
but it's also conflict.
That too often filmmakers think they have to show you the sorrow and the pity, so to speak, or the sorrow and the horror. And, what's the strangest thing I can come up with? I'll make a documentary about it, because people don't really. What do you want to see? A family that sits down to dinner every night and cheerfully has a discussion and, everybody's happy and pass the potatoes, please? No, you want to see the family that throws the potatoes.
Right. And I think Nick was I think you had more to this point.
No, but that's it. That is the point, because, and it's interesting that you just mentioned that, right? Because I'm a different animal. I'm a different beast. You just said, do you want to see the family that sits together and has the food and watches TV? I actually do. You know why I want to see them? Because my family is like that. But the people that are around us aren't like that. I mean, the number of people that we talk to where it's the husband goes to work every day and he's allowed to telework, but the reason he goes to the office is because he wants to get away from his wife. I'm like, we hear these stories all the time. I'm like, I would love to see people like me. I would love to see families that are together and in that documentarian style where it's it's real. It's not a farce. It's not fiction, but then I can see myself in it. I can just, again, being uplifted throughout the whole thing. You don't necessarily have to go through something, right, to be joyous or joyful at the end. Right? You can just be with the people or do things for others or whatever it is, right? In order to have that spirit. But again, the documentaries that you see out there, the ones that I think drive this passion that even you folks have, are the ones where there's major conflict and concern. And I would love, for some aspect of our culture to grow up a little bit more and say, there's a reason for us to share the positivity and the joy and the fulfillment that exists, because if we don't, there we go down the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is a good culture check. It's really interesting because something John said earlier is really true, which is storytelling is conflict. So when you're telling a good story, and you know this from Joseph Campbell, right?
Yep.
You just study it. You could study Hero's Journey, but you could study a lot of different other formats of storytelling, and conflict is central to it. So the question would be, if I set up a camera and just pointed it at the dinner table and the family sat down and ate and nothing happened within that, then, that's a really bad movie. It's a really bad documentary. But if you were to sit the camera down, if you were to sit the camera down and they sat down and you got to watch a lively discussion where there might have been a disagreement, but it was all in love. Very, very similar to the short film that was purchased by Disney last year that was up for an Oscar that we saw together, Nick. What's it called? WIPO.
Nine and WIPO.
Nine WIPO. So this is about a kid who was filming his two very elderly grandmothers that decided to live together because everyone in their life had died. And they're both in their 90s, and I think they're Chinese. And they had all sorts of conflict, Nick, in that short film. But it was hilarious because you knew at the end of it, they loved each other so much. And then what really brought that short film home, because there wasn't anything technical that he did, right? That was super technical filmmaking stuff. What really brought it home was this undercurrent, John and Libby, of death. You know that these two people have a very, very limited time left with one another. And they are soaking up every sweet minute of what they have left. They dance with each other.
And so that's well done, because I think that to me was the only conflict in the whole thing, is basically just, again, making the most of it. But it was 100%.
It was the hidden
positive.
Conflict. Yeah.
But exactly. But it was 100%. I mean, you and I both were like, this needs to win, because
that's the best short film. Yeah.
It's best short film, period. But that's the culture that I'm just speaking about, is just that there's not enough of just that positivity that we can latch onto, whether it's documentary or otherwise, where it's all love, it's all fun, it's all joy, because, and for me, I think
even within the conflicts, even within their,
because the thing is that they keep talking about how anxiety and depression and all these things are at an all-time high. Well, why? Because of conflict, right? If you think that there's always a conflict between you and the rest of the world, or the rest of the world and you, then you feel like there is nothing positive. There's no love there. If you lose purpose, if you lose your connection to other things and other people, that's where depression comes in. So I'm like, just throw me something positive, people. You know,
I think you're suggesting a radical form in this moment. It would be radical to show not how people for whom there, exist in some kind of utopia where there's nothing wrong, but where they treat a family, say, unit, or a neighborhood, say, that does figure out how to take care of each other, and that does figure out, how to be kind and how to have empathy, and to do that in a fun way that isn't boring. I mean, this was always the issue, William James, one of the films we wanted to do before all this was, that feeds into what we're doing, was called War on Us, U.S. And we were trying to solve the contradiction. Two quotes I would have begun the film with. One was, war is the coward's escape from the problems of peace, which I'm going to forget who said it now, but maybe it was William James. And then the second quote was "Man is war" by Patton, right? And so, that war is escape of the problems of peace. That's kind of like this person you're talking about who goes and goes off to work because he doesn't want to deal with the war at home, right? But I think that, William James in his book, in his essay, The Moral Equivalent of War, was looking for how do you do what you're saying? How do you elevate the art and everything else around? How do we not do all the things that war does for us? The sense of camaraderie in the trenches, the sense of drama and excitement that you get from conflict, the ultimate apotheosis of which, of course, is war. How do you achieve all that without actually killing each other, in the final analysis? And he was looking at art and other kinds of service as ways of doing that. Something equivalent to a kind of the Scouts or whatever. He was trying to find ways where society could organize itself around national service to give it that same sense of camaraderie. You could do that at all the different scales, from neighborhoods and families on, and where people saw it as their responsibility. If you had a sense of responsibility to the peace and well-being and the livelihood of your neighborhood, of your family, your extended family. Anyway, this would be the challenge, because it is the coward's escape from the problems of peace to just resort to, F you and let's, fight. And that is the kind of easy, cheap way out. So showing someone who figures that out, well, I like to think actually that's what we are doing in our film. Because when you see Martin Luther King do what he was doing, and you see how radical, or when you hear John Kennedy give his peace speech at American University just a few months before he dies, And he says the Russians are people too. Let's not forget that. We're all mortal in the final analysis. We all breathe the same air. We all love our children. And this kind of thing, this is what we're trying to show, what Malcolm was really like, this humorous, jovial, sweet-natured guy who wasn't this, He wasn't all about conflict. He was about saying, he was about love as much as any of the rest of them. And Bobby, my God, he really goes through transformations. And in the end, he's there with Cesar Chavez, on fast, breaking fast with the grape worker, with the farm workers. So, these were people who decided to solve conflict through a radical commitment to nonviolence and peace. And that, to me, is the ultimate example of maybe what you're saying. Yes, they were dealing in a conflicted world, and it was very dramatic what they did, but they did it in this completely marvelous and unexpected way that blew the minds of the powers that be. And you can tell they hated it. That was the scariest possible thing. If they had said, everybody take up arms, we're going to shoot these, the deep state, then, they would have been like, okay, perfect. We love that. We will surround you. We'll kill you. You're done. We'll isolate you. You'll be discredited. But by saying, no, we're going to do this non-violently. We're going to go to school to learn how to get hit and still ride, still ride into these segregated towns or whatever. I mean, amazing stuff that they did, that they trained to be peaceful. Amazing. So that's hopefully what we're our focus in this series is on the good part, the peaceful part, the part that is about, how you can radically transform the human experience. Now it's also about how the forces in opposition of that, dealt with these guys. And so that we have to have a wide awake, clear-eyed view of all that, but you can focus on the good part, we should.
I will live in the spirit. I will continue to live in the spirit of those four as I wear my shirt that says choose happy. And I will hope that I can avoid the fate of the four by making sure that I am not on anyone's radar, right? On the wrong people's radar. Let's put it that way.
Well, even if you are, absolutely. So what? That means you're doing something right. And if the more of us are on that radar, then they can't do us all, as I said earlier. So, everyone should be on their radar. We all are on their radar. They listen to absolutely everything. Now they have the computers that just do it. And so they're monitoring everything. They're tracking everything. They're going to assume they're going to get rid of cash and they're going to prevent you from spending money. I mean, there are all kinds of things that we have to be hyper vigilant about as we can choose happy, but we choose not to say no. We have to choose also to say no to some of their plans.
Got it. Absolutely. It's a wonderful culture check, Nick. I appreciate that. And from an institutional standpoint, I think Libby will get this. I went to school for journalism. You can change what is newsworthy. You can change some of the rules of newsworthiness. So when I tell you that the conflict is literally baked in, it's baked in. If you have a job in journalism, you can't print something that doesn't reach the standard of newsworthiness. And newsworthiness, institutionally speaking, is negative. If
it leads, it leads.
Right. It's not necessarily that it's negative. It's that it lends itself to conflict. And maybe if you change some of those things, you could do it.
I'll tell you something about that. I went to school. I was in college in the late 70s, early 80s. Mm-hmm. And, I worked for not only Metro Media here in New York City, but also between my junior and senior years in Boston. And they were burning Roxbury in those days. So what they did to the South Bronx a little bit earlier, they did to Roxbury, which is actually where Malcolm X grew up. And I just happened to be in school, the person closest to Roxbury. So my beeper would go off at like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and off I went to another fire. And the question they wanted you to ask, and the only question they wanted you to ask was, they wanted the woman standing there crying, because all of her stuff has been burned up and she's got no place to live and her kids are screaming. And they wanted you to ask, how does it feel? That's the question they wanted you to ask. They wanted you to ask, how does it feel? And they wanted just more crying, more sobbing. I don't know what I'm going to do. Yeah. And one day I'd had enough of that. and because I actually thought we've heard enough of it. We've heard that same story we have heard.
Yeah.
And so I asked, what do you do next? How do you, and I started asking what did you lose? And what did that mean? And what do you do next? And where do you go? And how do you see your next kind of week or two? And we put together this package that I thought was heartbreaking and really got to what was, if you're going to burn a neighborhood, what are you really doing when you burn a neighborhood? And because of the fact that this all happened in the middle of the night, and then it would get on the 6:00 news, no assignment editor, no senior person saw the piece. It just went on. And after the piece was on, I got called into the news director's office, and he said, and nobody ever called you by your first name. And so it was, Handros, what do you think you were doing with that piece? And so I tried to explain that I thought there was a cultural shift going on, and people should understand that a neighborhood was being destroyed that people had lived in for decades, and what that really meant. I said, that's not the story I sent you to go out and get. I sent you to get the story that said, how do you feel? And you're not covering fires anymore, by the way.
Oh, well.
Wow. That's,
you tried.
That's crazy.
Yep.
Well, look,
Yep.
you guys have been so incredibly generous with your time. I have to ask you, Nick, I know you want to know this too, but before you guys get out of here, can you just mention one or two tidbits that maybe stood out to you in your last in your interview with Dick Gregory, the last one apparently that he did before he passed away?
Well,
you said one or two. It's like, come on, it's Dick Gregory.
Yeah, I mean,
That's true. That's true. To be fair.
It's amazing because I feel like it was, he had basically gone about 8 or 9 dimensions ahead of us by the time we were speaking to him. Like he was talking about stuff like Planet X, and he was talking about stuff that I didn't fully understand. And he was talking in a language that was so far beyond, but every once in a while he'd bring it back down because I'd show him a picture of a guy he used to work with. And he'd be like, oh, he was really smart. But he was a trans-dimensional figure by the time. Some people would say, oh, he was crazy no, he was working on different dimensions that we just haven't caught up to yet. So I would love to actually, if you know his son, I would love to show that interview to his son and have him help us translate and help us tell the story of what his father did, because his father, because Dick was so instrumental in creating the House Select Committee on Assassinations in 1978. If it wasn't for Dick Gregory, that wouldn't have happened. And Dick was so far past all that by the time we spoke to him. We could not get some of those brick and mortar questions like those. We couldn't get him to talk about that because he wanted to talk about much more advanced stuff. So I would love to get, is his name Christian?
Christian.
Yep.
Yeah, we talked to him. We have this. Okay. The point is, I think that's what we need to do. I mean, you bringing him up, because I would love to, see what Christian knows about his dad's time doing all that and working with all these figures. I mean, they, as you may know, they brought the Zapruder film onto Geraldo's show. Geraldo had a show at the time called Good Night America. You know what I'm talking about?
I remember. Yes.
Oh, really? Anyway, and they showed it. And
you can actually go on X/Twitter and watch old clips of Geraldo, because he's actually, I guess, big on that platform of him doing that show.
He was kind of a righteous dude in those days.
He jumped the fence to Willowbrook to expose how terrible the whole process of institutionalizing people who were mentally impaired. They were being abused and what was going on there. No, he really was doing great journalism in those days.
Shout out to Geraldo, old Geraldo.
Yeah. Old Geraldo did great. And Dick Gregory was the one who had the connect, and he got Bob Groden, who is the one who, as a very young person, made us a copy. He worked at a film lab, and he made a copy of the Zapruder film. It came to them from Life. They made a copy, and then he would do showings around the country with this purloined copy. And, you could see it at the National Archives, but you couldn't see it anywhere else. And Dick Gregory got wind of it, and Dick Gregory made sure it got seen by the people. And that event led to a new congressional investigation into the murders of Dr. King and John Kennedy. And even though they were themselves whitewashes, they did have to admit that there was a conspiracy in both cases. And in the case of King, they said, oh, it was James Earl Ray and his brothers. And in the case of Kennedy, they were like, oh, it was probably the mob. They wouldn't, they didn't really get in, but important things came out as a result of all that. And anyway, so Dick Gregory was a hero. It was a huge moment for us to get that interview. And I need to go back and look at it. And I'm sure that there are pearls in there that maybe I will, after it's been about 7-8 years, maybe I'll be able to finally understand what he was talking about, because he was on another plane. He was on another plane.
I'll tell you something.
Like to me.
Yeah. He was still doing his show. He was still doing his shows though. And what was just wonderful was to see the outpouring of people who came to his comedy shows, and they lined up to see them, and then they lined up to get the autographs, and it was young and it was old and it was black and it was white, and it was just wonderful to see the people who came out to his comedy shows.
But a lot of his obviously regular audience, like he would say a line about whatever, Planet X or whatever, and people would just be like, mm-hmm. There was like a group of people who just totally understood everything. Yeah. So, I mean, it was great. He was like just rapping with them. And then I'll tell you one funny story that, he didn't say this on camera for us, but I went into, actually, I have it on, I have my iPhone camera. With it. I have this amazing backstage interview with Dick Gregory where he sits there and tells me, he's like, and again, I don't know maybe he's right about this. He's like, John Kennedy's still alive and he's living on an island off of the coast of
that's
Greece.
On camera.
Yeah, I have that on my,
oh my God.
We shot that.
All right. He said that, and he said a bunch of other really wild stuff. And, who knows? I mean, until recently, I mean, there's so many things that I have come to realize later in life. Well, actually, I have to think about that because, I mean, we just talked about some of them today. Yeah. So anyway, before Libby's like, shut up before you say anything really crazy. I'll shut up. But I'm just saying, maybe Dick was right all along, and that's all I'm going to say.
Well, I think generally speaking, he usually is, and it's one of those things like it's just, and it's so great. It was so great to have those conversations with him and kind of be blessed by his presence. And it was like that when he was around, everyone just gravitated, and it was silence. He spoke, you listen.
Yep. Yeah. And he had a way of saying things that were actually metaphors for other things. So I do hope you guys talk to Christian, because the thing that says, oh, that didn't sound right. Oh, he was actually meaning this. So
it was code. No, I know he's speaking in a high level code. I know he is.
And so we'll behind the scenes, we'll put you in touch, but man, this has been incredibly fun and informative. I've learned a ton. Nick's learned a ton.
That's right.
You guys learned something about each other. This couldn't have been better. Tell the people where they can find you, reach out to you, and see some of your work.
So the best place to see us is two places. To see For Died Trying, you can go to our website, fordiedtrying.com. And then the name of our company, our production company, is actually called The Press and the Public Project. And that website lists all the films that we have done, and you can find your way to all sorts of things there. So it's thepressandthepublicproject.com. And then if you just want to see assassinations, fordiedtrying.com.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's not just assassinations. You're going to see what these guys were doing at the end of their lives. That's the key. That's what makes it different. That's what convinced my dad. If you're out there and you're like, oh, how do I, Nick was saying, how do I reach my family? We have found the answer. This little short, it's under an hour prologue. You can show it to the most anybody you want to, the most skeptical person, like my father, who would not talk about this stuff, didn't want to hear about it. And you will see, when they see the pattern of what these four men were doing, the fight for peace, the fight for everything that they were fighting for, peace, freedom, equality, and what happens to them, and you realize, okay, right, this is what we're dealing with, and this is what we need, and more importantly, this is what we need to do going forward. So that's at fordiedtrying.com.
Is there any way to reach out to each of you individually? Are you on social media? Is there any way somebody can just ask you directly a question?
We are on social media through the For Died Trying name, and on our website. You can reach out to us on our website, and if you want to reach out as well, you can reach me at arcmovie@gmail.com.
arcmovie@gmail.com, as an American Ruling Class, which we are also re-releasing now. A dramatic documentary musical, first of its kind for the BBC, that has everyone in it from Kurt Vonnegut to Walter Cronkite to Pete Seeger to you name the kind of member, like kind of ruling class person. We got them. And we also had Barbara Ehrenreich, who stars in the middle of a musical number called Nickel and Dimed. So that is not to be missed. It's a cult favorite, and we are re-releasing that.
And that's the film with Louis Lapham, who just passed away. And that's the film with Louis Lapham
that everyone should see. Yeah.
Well, it's amazing.
The greatest.
That's amazing. And thank you so much for sharing that. And if you guys are watching or listening to this, let's face it, you already know where to find the podcast: Apple, Spotify, YouTube. But you can find me and Nick individually at some different places. If you want to reach out to us, ask us questions, figure out Nick's Zen, how to get some for yourself, you can do that, right? Like you can email him at nick@bonsai.film and he'll answer all those questions. You can also reach out to him on Instagram at They Call Me Mr. Bugs. And that's kind of a new page, but so he's on there all the time. So you can like find him, DM him, he'll answer there. If you want to reach out to me.
Nice Heat of the Night reference. Sorry.
There you go. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. You nailed it.
Yep.
If you want to.
TCM.
Okay. Everybody go download TCM, by the way, as well. Yep. And if you want to reach out to me, you can do that on X, formerly called Twitter. I'm at Flame in Your Heart. You're spelled UR, so Flame in UR Heart. Or you can just search Chris Barkley and I will come right up. And if you want to reach out to us together and check out everything we're all about, you can go to themakeitpodcast.com or you can go to www.bonsai.film and you'll see everything we're up to, from our newsletter to our online shop that has so much cool gear, and to our new e-letter that's completely free, just costs you your email address. It's called Movie Money, and we just give you 42 different ways to raise capital for your film, whether it be a feature film, short film, or doc. And that is authored by, again, the one and only Nicholas Buggs. So appreciate you for that, Nick. It's blowing up. People love that thing. And so, yeah, do likewise and head to the site, and you can download that completely for free. Nick, did I leave anything out?
No, man. I think you went through all the socials, the handles, the websites, the interwebs. We got it covered.
So if I did that, then why don't you just do your thing and leave us with the credo?
Oh, I would love to. I'm not going to hit y'all with another culture check. Don't worry about it. You know, I want to freak you out. So as I always say to our friends, our family, our fans, our followers out there, be better, be creative, be engaged.
And thank you for listening. John, Libby, Nick, talk to you soon.
Yep. We'll do it again. We have to.
Appreciate you.
Folks.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
So much fun. Best of luck. Thank you, Papa Bear. Thank you, Sam.
Well, it's been just over how many years is it now? Someone really should put this out. Is it one big joke flying over my head? Or am I the over my